Hi, I'm Hope Klein, Health Education and Food Safety Field Specialist with SDSU Extension.
And I'm Megan Erickson, a Nutrition Field Specialist with SDSU Extension.
And today we're in our kitchens talking about jams and jellies.
Now, jams and jellies can get tricky, so we are here today to help you troubleshoot some of those problems.
If you see air bubbles in your jars of jams and jellies after they have been processed, there are 3 things that you can do to prevent this from happening in the future. The first is to take a spatula and wipe around the outer edges of the jam or jelly once you have poured them into the jar. This helps remove any air bubbles that may have been trapped when you poured the jam or jelly into the jar. The second thing that you can do is to take a spoon and remove the foam from the top of the jam or jelly while you are heating them. The third thing that you can do is to be timely about pouring the jam or jelly into the jar once it has reached the appropriate temperature. This helps ensure that the jam or jelly is being poured into the jar before it has started forming into a gel and setting.
Now, if there's a formation of crystals, this could be caused by a few reasons. One is that there's too much sugar. Make sure that you're using an evidence-based recipe and following the directions correctly. Another reason is that the sugar is sticking to the inside of the pot. So to prevent this, make sure that you're dissolving all the sugar as the jelly cooks. You can also take a damp cloth and wipe around the edge of the pot to get rid of the sugar. And thirdly, another reason is the mixture was cooked too slowly or for too long. Make sure that you're cooking the jelly rapidly and then immediately removing that from the heat and ladling into your jars. Another way is always do small batches according to your recipe, and don't double your recipe. That won't turn out.
One of the first things that could have gone wrong is that you could have overcooked or undercooked your jam or jelly prior to jarring it. By overcooking or undercooking, this can impact the gelling capacity of the pectin inside of the fruit. The second thing that could have gone wrong is that you maybe didn't follow the recipe exactly. So you don't want to alter the amount of the different ingredients that are in the recipe. You also only want to make 1 batch of jam or jelly at a time. And lastly, it could be that you moved your finished product too soon. Once you take your jam or jelly out of the water bath canner, you want to ensure that you let them sit for 12 to 24 hours to provide enough time for the jam or jelly to set. You can always reprocess a batch of soft jelly. To see how to do this, visit the National Center for Home Food Preservation website.
So why is this? One reason is that the fruit may be underripe. So make sure that you're using ripe fruit. Another reason could be that you're squeezing the jelly bag when straining the juice from the fruit. Try to avoid doing this. You want just that natural drip from the fruit. This will ensure that you have more of a clear product. And finally, you may have just waited too long. By the time that you took it off the heat and ladled it into the jars, it may have set too much. So just make sure that you're going through each step quickly before it gels too much.
This could be from overcooking your jam or jelly, which will affect the gel point. The other reason may be that your fruit had too much pectin in it. You always want to use ripe fruit and follow the recipe.
Double batches sound enticing, but we actually don't recommend doing them. By doing a double batch, it won't turn out correctly. It will interfere with the gel formation.
One method that you can do is you can take a cold metal spoon and dip it into your jam and jelly. When you lift the spoon, the jam and jelly should all slide off in one sheet. This would mean that you have reached the appropriate doneness. Another method is to closely monitor for temperature. You want your jam or jelly to reach 220 degrees Fahrenheit. Another method you can do is take a small amount of jam or jelly and put it in the freezer for a couple of minutes. Once you check it, you should have a nice gel formation.
Good question. So if you discover that you have fruit floating in your jar, This could be for a number of reasons. One could be that your fruit wasn't ripe enough. So make sure that you're using ripe fruit that you're selecting before you can any jam or jelly. Another one is that you're not crushing or grounding your fruit thoroughly. If you have too large of fruit pieces, there's still air trapped in them, which causes the fruit to float basically in your jar. Another reason is that you didn't cook it long enough. So make sure that you're following a tested recipe and that you are following the directions correctly.
Weeping of your jam and jellies can be a result of having too much acid in the juice from your jams and jellies being stored in a place that is too warm or stored in a place where the temperature fluctuates frequently.
If you find that your jam or jelly is kind of a darker color, it may be because that you cooked it too long, or you stored it for too long, or at too high of temperatures. So make sure again that you're following the recipe correctly, cooking or processing them at the right amount of time. Be sure to label and date your jars to make sure, we're all forgetful at times. So make sure you label and date to ensure you know how long they're good for, and also making sure that you're storing your jars in a cool, dark location.
Yes, reduced sugared products can be canned. You just have to make sure to follow a reduced sugar recipe.
We don't ever want to see mold on our food. That's not good. So no, it's still not good if you see mold. Some of these molds may contain toxins that affect the rest of your jams or jellies. So our motto is always, throw it out, but if you're ever in doubt, definitely throw it out.
So there are 3 key takeaways that you should have learned about jams and jellies. The first is to always use an evidence-based recipe. The second is to always use ripe fruit. And the third is to always be checking for the doneness of your jam or jelly.
Thank you for joining Hope and I in our kitchen. We hoped either you learned something new or you just became more confident in canning your jams and jellies. So let's start canning and jam out.